right.
Doing that now.
Yep. I am getting in here now. Turn down the audio. Perfect. Yep. Perfect. Perfect. All right. Perfect. All right. Right. Okay. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yes, sir.
The NFL Scouting Combine just concluded. Free agency starts next week. Welcome to March Madness, NFL style, and more specifically, Miami Dolphins style. They've gone mad. The Dolphins have gone mad with their treatment of Christian Wilkins. What's going on, Dolphins fans? Thanks for watching this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I am your host, Miami Dolphins columnist Chris Perkins for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. That is my colleague, David Furones, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins writer. As always, we welcome our viewers and invite you to send along your thoughts and questions on our live chat. Some questions we'll answer during the show. Others I will answer later today in an online Q&A article. And a quick reminder, if you miss any part of this show, you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. On to the March Madness NFL style. We will get our combine report from David Furones, who was on site in Indianapolis last week. He spoke with Mike McDaniel. He spoke with Chris Grier. He probably spent late nights at St. Elmo's Steakhouse, Prime 47, Harry and Izzy's, all those other locales where we sit out and wait for GMs and executives to come in and get them drunk and pump them for information. We'll talk about whether the Dolphins are doing the right thing by allowing Christian Wilkins to hit the free agent market. And with free agency and the new league year officially beginning a week from tomorrow, it starts on Wednesday, March 13th, we'll discuss what we think the Dolphins will be doing next week. We've got a deep pool of possibilities between combine and free agency. Let's dive in. All right, so Furones, you were in Indy, as we said last week. Did the combine, do you think, convince the Dolphins to trade their first-round pick or keep their first-round pick? What do you take from Grier and McDaniel, and what do you take from the times and all that stuff of the prospects?
Well, it was a great week at the combine. I hit all three of those that you named, and then some. You gotta go into the JW lobby, the high velocity bar that's attached to it. So all those spots. So it was a great week. A lot of late nights, and then also early mornings, trying to get up for some combine interviews. And then when you wake up 3 hours later, trying to identify how badly do I need that prospect interview? Can I afford to just start at the next hour? And how much more valuable could a couple extra or a couple snooze button hits be to my day over here? So a lot of fun over there. So with the 21st pick, Chris Grier is not committed yet to using it. I asked him this question, and he did say he is either willing to trade up if there's a home run prospect, as he called it, trade down. I mean, the Dolphins could use more draft picks. They have a gap in that third and fourth round without a draft pick, and a lot of prospects that I look at, I could see going in the mid rounds, and I'm like, man, but the Dolphins, they go from their second round pick, they don't pick again until 5. Yep. A lot of those guys could go in that range. So my main takeaway, though, I think the biggest thing to come out of the combine is it seems like it's looking more and more like the Dolphins are indeed planning on locking in Tua for a long-term extension. Yeah. I know with the way the season ended on a 3-game losing streak, probably many fans were a little uneasy about the idea. But at a time when you always see GM Chris Grier offer open-ended answers on a lot of things a week from free agency, he did seem set, as did Mike McDaniel, on locking in Tua long-term. And it speaks to the trust commitment and confidence the organization has placed in Tua for years. So after Mike came in and developed him further from who he was the first 2 seasons, and Tua finally made it through a season healthy, why not give him what he's earned? Now, here's the kicker with all that, is that it's looking more and more like Tua is indeed getting that $50+ million in average annual value, like Joe Burrow, like Lamar Jackson, like Justin Herbert. I already see you shaking your head, like Jalen Hurts. So you're not getting off cheap here. It will drastically change the way the Dolphins do business when it comes to team building in future seasons. And you either have to go the route of the Rams, shipping away high-priced talent like they did with Jalen Ramsey last offseason to the Dolphins, once you can no longer afford them under the cap, or the Chiefs in the same way, and really have to draft well and hit on those draft picks to supplement what's leaving the organization in future years.
So, well, first of all, let's welcome in some of our viewers. We got a lot of the usuals here: Matt Newton, Noop 942001, Dave Harbor, Lofi Anime, NFT, Patrick Becchio. Thanks for being with us. Did I say Dave Harbor from San Diego? Pete's Takes is here. Walt Dog 1234. So that's One-Eyed Jack 233. Hello to all of you guys. Thanks for joining us. Furones, let's talk about the Tua thing for a quick second here. I guess there's no big deal if it doesn't work out after a couple of years, because we see what the Broncos are doing with Russell Wilson. I'm thinking that eventually something like that might happen with Dak Prescott. Something like that might happen with Jalen Hurts. I don't see any of these guys as transformational, do-it-yourself, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady type quarterbacks. But that's what you have to pay, right? I mean, you have to pay $45-50 million. I would have extended Tua for a team-friendly $40 million. He'd have probably laughed in my face, and we'd have played on the 5th-year option. My question to you: is this the right move for the Dolphins? I don't think it is, signing Tua to a multi-year deal. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, I believe last year, when sort of the organization had to start thinking about extension talks with Tua, I think that 40 million range was at least 40 million, sort of as a starting point, was what the organization was looking at. They saw Daniel Jones get that money, which now the Giants are obviously regretting. And I even saw Rich Eisen say that the Giants are off with Daniel Jones, and they're going to be letting him go when a first chance they get. Now, obviously, I think the Dolphins feel Tua is much better than Daniel Jones, but maybe also factoring in that Daniel Jones got off with a big contract, and probably that wasn't the most prudent deal for the Giants. So, and then I would have maybe upped it. I've been on this program earlier this offseason saying, okay, $45 million range, because after that successful 22 season, then sure, he threw a few more interceptions in 23, still has some questions, but he maintained a similar level of play, hit the deep ball even better this year. I felt like those go routes with Tyreek Hill and even Jalen Waddle in that Jets game, you saw more of those this season, led the league in passing yards, and made it through a full season healthy. After doing all those things, checking off those boxes, I felt like, okay, yeah, and with the market going up, yeah, you could get him into that mid-40s range, but still not willing, I wasn't, to go into that $50 million range, which is really top of the line. But that's sort of the price of doing business with a quarterback now these days, and it's just going to keep going up. And the salary cap came in at that $255.4 million number, which was about $12 million more than a lot of people anticipated. So now that's going to shift how people view what quarterbacks should be paid, and really across the board at all positions. It's going to really shift just how teams allocate their resources even more to these top players. So, and it'll only continue to grow bigger. So in future seasons, then maybe that it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. And in a couple of years, quarterbacks are making $60+ million in average annual value. And you say, oh, you're doing great with Tua's contract if he ends up doing really well. Now, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, they're in the 40s in that. And right now, those would be fantastic, of course. So, I mean, it really is just the price of doing business with a quarterback. You hope that guy's elite. Tua still has to answer some questions to get into that really top of the line status. He still hasn't won a playoff game. Needs to show he can win that for you. But he'll be getting his opportunity, and it really seems like the Dolphins are committed to it. And this is part of really showing that confidence in him, is that if it's true what they were saying the last 2 years, they're going to ride it out and give him that contract.
Yeah. All right, so let's go out to the text line because, we kind of talked Tua a little bit because Tua is the quarterback, but we were talking combine and draft. So here are a few things on that along that wavelength. Walt Dog 123 says trade back for more picks, need to draft and development. I like that idea. Peter McDowell asked, do you think we should trade back from 21? We have no depth and the cupboard is bare due to Greer's aggressive big signings and poor drafting the last couple of seasons. Lo-Fi says, I add draft capital by trading Holland at his highest value before we dish out money. 60 tackles, 1 interception, not worth the hype. Then Matt Newton comes back and says, Michael Penix looks good. He plays a bigger, stronger Tua. That's the Washington quarterback, the left-hander. He was at the Senior Bowl and did very well at the Combine, from what I hear. And he goes on to say, but McDaniel and Greer are sold on Tua. That's the story. So here's where I want to go with this, Furones. I like the idea of trading back and getting more picks if the guy that you really want at 21 is not there, because you do need to load up on multiple positions. And, that number one, if you trade out of the first, it could get you a high second and a high third. If you trade down, it could get you, like whatever, the number 26 pick or 27, and then maybe a mid-second. Right now, the Dolphins, as everybody knows, have 6 draft picks. A first, which is number 21.
Does everybody know that? Doesn't
I know. I'm just recounting. So look, they have the first, number 21, the second round, number 55, and then they don't have another one till the 5th round. So by trading out of the first, you could get 2 seconds and a third. What do you think about all that mess?
Yeah, 2 seconds and a third if you trade out, entirely out of the first round.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking maybe like a small trade back where, you do get something where maybe it's a late second or into the third. And then maybe if you're losing Christian Wilkins, you get a compensatory pick. And then all of a sudden you start to stack up some of those middle round picks. But I don't want to go drastically either in trading too far back and missing out on a lot of first round talent unless you really got a second rounder that you think is going to be a steal and is truly a first round talent that you're going to be able to get down there. So I could see, I like the trade down prospect to add some of those middle round selections, but maybe not go too far into it. And maybe you could stack on a future first round pick if you are trading back far enough. So that could be desirable.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: what are in the draft? And this is kind of a tough one. What do you think should be the Dolphins if they stay at first and second? What positions do they go for, knowing that you need a number 3 receiver, whether it's a slot receiver or a tight end? If Christian Wilkins is gone, you got to look at D tackle. You got to replace Xavier Howard. If Rob Hunt goes, I guess you could have Liam Eichenberg at center and maybe Rob Jones, who, potential restricted free agent, come back and he could start at one of those guard spots, Lester Cotton. What are you doing in the first or second round?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of interior offensive linemen that could work really well in that first round. I want to go so much the route of a slot receiver. I know I've seen a mock draft with Brian Thomas Jr., LSU wide receiver, who's a bigger outside guy, going there to the Dolphins at 21. But when I asked if he had met with the Dolphins at the Combine, and he said he actually had not formally met with them. So I guess that possibly speaks to maybe do the Dolphins feel like he's not going to be available at that spot, or really not looking, they're really not prioritizing the wide receiver with that first round pick. But I mean, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon as center, you get a franchise center, especially now with the questions surrounding Connor Williams. He's going through his rehab. He's going to put his free agency on the back burner, and Actually, if you do that and Connor Williams is waiting, then maybe he becomes your center. And Connor Williams, if he wants to move back to guard, especially since you have a couple of openings potentially at guard, if either Rob Hunt isn't back or you have an opening at left guard, then something like that could work really well. I'm looking at tight end, but the only real top tight end prospect, elite tight end prospect, is Brock Bowers. And he's probably going to be out of reach for the Dolphins picking at 21. And I would see the floor for him being number 15 to the Colts. So I don't think he's getting past the Colts at 15, where maybe if you really want him, you could trade up to right before the Colts. But what would the price be for that to go from 21 to 14 or whatever? And you got to find a team that's willing to play ball and willing to trade out of their spot as well. So a couple things to work on there, and defensive tackle could be a spot if you are losing Wilkins next week. Then the couple of Texas guys, Byron Murphy, if he's in the first round, maybe Tavondre Sweat later on. He's more of a nose tackle, so you're also possibly losing Raekwon Davis. He's a free agent and could maybe upgrade at nose if you bring in a guy like Sweat at 366 pounds. So there's a lot of different things the Dolphins could do with that selection.
Yeah, there are. What about, I mean, the edge?
Yeah, edge. Now, I don't know if I would go as high as a first rounder with him. I do like Dallas Turner. I think we'll talk about local prospects. He's kind of the South Florida first round guy this year coming out of Alabama. But I would maybe look deeper into the draft for an edge guy, because even though Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb have the injury concerns and they're going to be rehabbing, possibly will start training camp on the PUP list, you still have those guys. So I think if you want a real franchise edge rusher that's going to start from day one, then you got Jalen Phillips, you got Bradley Chubb as your starters. Andrew Van Ginkel is we're going to talk about free agency too. I think he's a priority free agent because you have the injury concerns, and you need with Phillips and Chubb, and you need depth at that position anyway. So then I don't know if I'd go that high on an edge rusher, but I think the Dolphins do need depth either through free agency or a mid or late round pick that could really stand out on the edge.
All right, here's a funny one from Pete Stakes. Trade Tua for capital and draft best players available. Cheat Russell Wilson with Sierra sitting in the booth. No brainer. Stephen Ross is probably the oldest coach in the league, and it's a rare situation. Oldest owner. Let me ask you this though. Russell Wilson, would you kick the tires on him as a backup quarterback for, $2 million? I like Mike White, but this would be a threatening situation to Tua, wouldn't it?
Would it be? Russell Wilson is toward the tail end of his career. He's 35 now, right?
So, yeah, he was 2012. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's getting up there, and I mean he's not coming off the best seasons. And actually, Russell Wilson is a guy that sort of right-handed. You flip him around, and a lot of people compare him to Tua. When Russell Wilson was really playing well those years in Seattle, and then started to dip a little bit once Marshawn Lynch wasn't there. The defense wasn't as good, and then they did rely on him more though. So. I guess, and he has worked with Darrell Bevell in the past too, so I guess it could be a fit. But yeah, I mean, if you end up giving Tua a big money deal, then I don't think he would necessarily feel threatened by a 35-year-old Russell Wilson coming in at $2 million. And even if he did come in off an injury for Tua and plays well, like a Joe Flacco situation in Cleveland, it's not like you're moving on from Tua later on because Russell Wilson filled in well out of necessity coming out of the bullpen.
I might kick Russell Wilson's tires. I thought the funny part was the Sierra sitting in the booth. I love that.
You wanted to get that in the show. You got to.
Right, exactly. So, but I like Mike White. I know I wrote the column last year saying that Skylar Thompson should be the backup. I grew to really like Mike White. We didn't see him play a whole lot, but we saw him play with the Jets. But if you're constantly trying to upgrade, and I don't believe that Tua is staying healthy for all 17, so maybe not. Maybe it's not such a bad idea. Let me add this before we get out of here, because we're still talking draft. To Peter McDowell, we will do a mock draft later. But who was it? Mark Jones? Mark Jones, Mark Jones says we need a pass rusher with the first round pick. And I know what you just said. I could kind of agree with Mark Jones. And here's why. Because I don't know that both Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are coming back at 100%. And if, maybe one reaches 100% by Thanksgiving, the other ends up playing the whole season at 80%. Van Ginkel, he's a priority, but he doesn't quite have that punch. There are some good edge rushers. The Latu kid from UCLA might be around, but he'll probably be gone by 21. I wouldn't mind seeing an edge rusher because edge rusher and corner and quarterback and wide receiver are such premium positions in today's NFL. So I wouldn't rule it out. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, it is a premium position. So, I mean, and I wouldn't be surprised either. And Chris Greer is going to go best player available. So even if he's not necessarily going to pick the greatest position of need, and maybe edge rusher is high on the priority list of positions of need, if by late April you are not so pleased with the rehab progress that Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips have made to that point, then maybe it's there are shifts in priority. But I mean, last year he went cornerback Cam Smith, and maybe he wasn't actually the best player available, but just on their board he was, and then that's why Cam Smith did play 20 defensive snaps, which was fewest among all first and second round picks last year. Vic Fangio probably had something to do with it. I wrote about it this past week at the Combine, but maybe they could develop him under Anthony Weaver, but after they had grabbed Jalen Ramsey in a trade just a couple months earlier, then for the first draft pick to also be a cornerback, spoke volumes to that Chris Greer is going to grab the guy he wants regardless of position, almost regardless of position, as opposed to just restricting himself to, okay, what holes do we still have after free agency? All right, or the first wave of free agency? All right, that's the position we need to address. So I think it's more so it's got to work out both the players available and the position for it to line up that way.
Real quick before we get out of this segment, I had this down too. Are you convinced the Dolphins can make a good pick at number 21 if they keep it? Look at their recent success with first rounders, right? Tua, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Phillips, Austin Jackson, Christian Wilkins. I know Noah Igbenogany is in that group also. That's a pretty impressive group of first-round picks. I would trust Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel to make the correct pick. Look, Cam Smith as a corner, I didn't really agree with it, but later you saw the logic, right, as soon as Jalen Ramsey went down. So I would trust them to make the right pick at number 21.
Yeah, I'm with you. We know they've missed on some picks in the last couple of drafts, but those were later. Those weren't first rounders. Right. Basically punted on 2 drafts, except Devon Achane, which was tremendous as a third round pick. So Cam Smith, let's still hold off on him. Maybe Anthony Weaver can develop him a little bit, and maybe a new system gets him some more playing time. But their first round selections. I know we had different thoughts on Austin Jackson before last season, but now he has shown to do well. Tua also, and Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips. That was a good 21 class on top of into the second round, Javon Holland. So some earlier draft picks. I think recent history, Dolphins have done fairly well.
All right, let's shift to free agency. And we know that the 2-day illegal tampering period starts on Monday, I believe, at 11 a.m. Teams have to use the franchise tag.
You said illegal?
Yes.
Well, it becomes legal. It becomes legal.
Legal. The legal. I know. Legal tampering period, I should say. That's a good catch.
Legal tampering is right now. Legal tampering is Tom Brady on the boat, and Brian Flores is going to rat you out.
Right. Exactly. Nicole Hardman. That's the illegal tampering. Okay, so anyway, teams have to use the franchise tag by 4 o'clock next Tuesday. The league year starts 4 o'clock next Wednesday.
4 o'clock today. 4 o'clock today for the franchise tag.
Yes, today. I'm sorry, today. Yes.
The next Monday.
Right.
Next Monday, legal tampering.
Right.
Next Wednesday.
Next week is the
free agency.
So now that we have that straight, all right. So look, the Dolphins. If the Dolphins lose Christian Wilkins and Xavier Howard, and especially for no compensation, they could have, you could have franchise tagged Wilkins and whatever. What do you do? What do you do in free agency, and what is the message that it sends?
Yeah. So 4 p.m. deadline today, and NFL Network reported yesterday that it won't be used on Christian Wilkins, the franchise tag. I was hearing just on Sunday that a final decision hadn't been made yet. So clearly Monday was when that path was chosen, assuming Ian Rappaport of NFL Network is correct, as he usually is. So still a little less than a week to work it out before he hits the market, because a long-term deal could still be worked out before legal tampering with Christian Wilkins begins occurring from outside teams Monday at noon. So a long-term deal could be beneficial in the short term under the 2024 salary cap, saving some money, while very costly long-term, which we talked about it. You're going to be in cap hell anyway later on when Tua makes his big money, and you got all these other high-priced guys. You can still do it if you're really all in for 2024. So, but to lose a foundational piece of the rebuild as the top draft selection in 2019 would hurt. But it would also be prudent not to offer him double of what Zach Sealer makes after his extension. And that's after his extension was negotiated last training camp. So Zach Sealer, of course, he was a 7th-round pick that then was claimed off waivers from the Ravens and has since made his mark here in Miami over several seasons. But his cap number next year is I believe 11.9 in that area. So Wilkins, it looks like his franchise tag, that would have been 22.1 million, and it looks like he's looking for more than that in average annual value. So you're thinking, what, 24, 25 million? Is he really worth double what Zach Sealer's getting paid? I think Zach Sealer's a lot more bang for the buck, and it does appear Wilkins is really intent on playing hardball here. So it's tough to see him go, but if it's really not at the right price, then you probably are right in moving on and maybe spending that money elsewhere.
What do you think? I'm a little surprised at the price that they have, apparently, that they have for Wilkins, right? Because franchise tag, correct me if I'm wrong, franchise tag is the average of the top 5. Transition tag is the average of the top 10. You don't even want to pay Wilkins that?
Yeah, but then there's a difference in the compensation. It's easier to swing them away, where the non-exclusive franchise tag, if a team does end up landing him and you don't match that offer, then you get 2 first-round picks. So it's basically, what team is really going to give away 2 first-round picks and also sign Christian Wilkins to that kind of money? So that's sort of just, transition tag would be cheaper, but it's easier to sway him away, and you can still match another offer, but you're not getting anything back if another team does go ahead and snag him.
Yeah, I just thought and I don't know I don't know what the transition tag number is, but
average of top 10. Oh, but I think I think it's 18 instead of 22.
You don't even want to pay Christian that for a year. That's kind of what gets me. That's kind of what gets me is that, dude, what number do you have slotted for this guy?
Yeah, well, you just don't see the transition tag used that often. The most common is the non-exclusive franchise tag, and then exclusive would be reserved for a quarterback. Yeah, that where another team that wants to take him would be willing to give up 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, I would pay Christian Wilkins $20 million, but look, I would have kept Christian Wilkins and Xavier Howard. Let's go down the list. So Van Ginkel, he's staying, right?
I would see it that way, especially with the questions about Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. Yeah, I would feel so. He becomes a priority. Here's
the bigger one. Connor Williams and Rob Hunt. I don't think they can both stay. Connor Williams, as Drew Rosenhaus has said, and you reported, he's going to play it slow. He might be, he's recovering from the ACL. Rob Hunt is probably going to go off the board really quick, right? He'll be gone as soon as free agency opens, I think. Connor, I would keep not because I think Rob Hunt is the better player, but I think Connor is the more important player. And I would rather keep my center, left tackle, right tackle, skeleton, backbone together rather than to lose Connor. Now, you could draft the kid from Oregon, Jackson Powers Johnson, and shift Connor to left guard, but I would rather just keep Connor Williams there. What would you do with do you think they can both stay, and who would you keep if not?
I've always kind of felt that that between Wilkins and Rob Hunt, you need one of those two guys. So I feel like if and then Connor Williams would have been maybe more of a priority, but then after his injury, ACL tear in that Monday night game against the Titans, and that leaves more questions with him. But so if Wilkins is indeed gone, then I really want to see Rob Hunt on this team next year. I feel like he should be a priority, and I'd hate to see him go. He's also a great guy and a very good, reliable blocker who also has been healthy for the most part. Just had a hamstring injury pop up last season. And Connor Williams, I mean that situation is going to be in the future. He's focused on his rehab now, so. That's really, and it could be beneficial if he goes and takes it into June, as he just puts his free agency on the back burner. Maybe some of that post June 1 money could go to him from the Xavier Howard release. And also we are seeing on Twitter right now, Aaron Wilson, Houston-based reporter, very plugged in, saw him at the Combine. He's reporting the Dolphins are releasing Keon Crossan, your boy.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I know.
That saves $2.9 million for the Dolphins, and he didn't play last year, so it was kind of an expected move.
It was. I mean, Keon reported on Twitter, I think, that he had 3 surgeries. I think, right? Didn't he send it? Right, the last of my 3 surgeries. I was like, wow, incredible. Okay, so going along with free agency, Lo-Fi says tag Hunt would be a good option. If we don't, there could be something going on that we're not being told. Cap for Life also asks, who is our nose tackle as of today? So, yeah, tagging Hunt. My thing on the guards is if you were to list the position of importance from 1 to 22 of all the starters, left guard is 21, right guard is 22. I'm probably not paying a guard 10 or 12 million. Depends on my situation, but I probably would not tag. I wouldn't tag Robert Hunt. So, I mean, you said he's important. And then who is the nose tackle as of today? I don't know. I guess Zach Sealer is the guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, Zach Taylor would be more the 3 technique, but yeah, that's right, Raekwon Davis's spot, and then who's at least in the previous system would be on the field for maybe 50% of snaps, and then a lot of nickel packages don't include him. Right. So right now it would be either if they bring Raekwon Davis back on a team friendly deal. I know he said he wants to be back on locker cleanout day, or you're dipping into a free agency for a reasonably priced veteran, or you look in this draft, and I mentioned Tavondre Sweat from Texas, right. Big 366-pounder, and in Anthony Weaver's scheme, you might need someone like that. The negative for Raekwon Davis is he was up there, but then he lost all that weight last year to play for Fangio, and then if he would be a fit, he would need to regain all that weight again. So, maybe in the draft, maybe in free agency, if not.
Yeah. All right, let's look free agency again. Let's look at the secondary very quickly here. Deshaun Elliott, Brandon Jones, Nick Needham, what are you doing there? Javon Holland is back. We know that X is probably going to be gone. You could pair Javon Holland with either Deshaun Elliott or Brandon Jones and take care of it there. At the corners, you have Jalen Ramsey. You've got Kader Kohu, maybe Cam Smith develops, and then you would have Nick Needham to compete for a starting job or to be a backup. That could work out pretty well. Does it upgrade the secondary enough if you do that, or do you have to go out and get somebody like Eddie Jackson, the Chicago safety from Dillard? He's a local guy. Anyway.
Boyd Anderson. Boyd Anderson.
Oh, Boyd Anderson. Sorry, Boyd Anderson. So what are you doing here? What are you doing in the secondary?
Yeah, I mean, there's a spot there at cornerback. Now, part of it could be just developing Cam Smith. It could be as simple as that. Now, I don't know if you want to spend as much on cornerback when you could maybe see Cam Smith developing into that guy. But if you want to have a top combination like you were expecting you were going to have last season with X and Jalen Ramsey, then maybe you are prioritizing that position. And hey, Chris Greer even said he's not closing the door on Xavier Howard, which I found very interesting. Now, X, he doesn't seem willing to be taking a lot less money, but maybe he gets a taste of the market. I think there will be a little bit of a market for him. And maybe if he says, in comparison to what the Dolphins offer me, and keeping in mind that they're number one in how they treat players, that was great timing for that survey to come out right before free agency and that ranking, and a great piece by Dave Hyde in chronicling everything that the Dolphins do. Then maybe the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So, and plus you consider the state income tax benefits of playing in Florida. So, and also at safety, Sean Elliott and Brandon Jones are both free agents, and there's some free agents out there. But here's one name I heard at the Combine that could be interested in the Dolphins is Vikings veteran Harrison Smith. He's up there in his mid-30s. He's not a free agent right now. He is under contract, but as teams he might be a post-June 1 cut for Minnesota. But, he got to multiple-time Pro Bowler. So I was hearing that maybe he could be interested in making his way to Miami potentially. It's late in his career, possibly join a contender who can make a Super Bowl run. And if the Dolphins, they don't bring back Sean Elliott and Brandon Jones, then a veteran safety could slide right in and play alongside Javon Holland.
Yep, that would be very interesting. I like Harrison Smith. Before we get out of here on free agency, Clark Hartman says avoid guys with injury histories, especially on the offensive line. 12 versions of that unit played last year. My question to you is Greer going to change? He kind of said, right, screw the injury history. We're going for it. In this version of the Dolphins, I like Greer's attitude because you've got to go for it right now. So I'm going for it. I'm taking another Teron Armstead if I have to, because I'm trying to win a Super Bowl with this crew while I've got Tua at a manageable contract. That's one thing. But what do you think? Do they need to we know the injuries they had last year, but it wasn't because Chubb or Jalen Phillips. It wasn't because he had an injury history. So what do you think?
Yeah, and that's how you find your bargains too. So you can get a guy that's a superior talent at a lower price because of an injury history, and I think Chris Greer kind of looks at it that way sometimes and finding some of those deals. So I would expect him to be consistent in the way he's done business in that regard in the past.
Yeah, I would too. All right, so real quick here, we have got our Furones bonus.
Oh, the Furones bonus.
There we go, baby. I love it. All right, Furones. So you had a good story last week. You wrote about the South Florida players at the Combine. You talked to a lot of them. They were talking about how special it is to play football down here. I love that Cam Kitchens quote. That some people worried about getting bombed at the Meadowlands or whatever. I'm worried about it.
Hard Rock. Yeah, he's worried about getting bombed at Trask Powell and hearing the crowd go blue. If you've never watched a game at Trask Powell Stadium in North Miami-Dade County, then that's a famous roar from the stands whenever a big pass play is hit. And you'd even hear it locally at some 7-on-7 camps, where it happens a lot more often because it's just down the field, one-on-one plays, wide receiver, cornerback drills. You always hear everyone going, blue.
I love that. That was a great quote. So look, Furones, okay, so you wrote about those South Florida guys at the Combine. Give us 5 South Florida products you'll be watching in the NFL for whatever reason next year. Now, my 5 are Lamar Jackson, Levante David, the linebacker. Lamar, the two-time MVP, local kid. Levante David, I've always liked him. Miami Northwestern kid, went to Nebraska. I think he didn't have the grades for Miami or something like that. But, I mean, what a strong player. A grown-ass man. I'm looking at Mike White. Because I don't think Tua's going to stay healthy for all 17 games. I'm looking at Brian Burns, the defensive end, because he's emerging. 8 sacks this year, but 12 and a half last year. He's one of the top free agents. And then Zay Flowers, Lamar Jackson's running mate, the wide receiver up there in Baltimore. So that's the 5 locals that I'm looking at. There's a lot of others. The Bosa's, I left them out. Geno Smith, John Feliciano, Eddie Jackson. Oh, we could go on and on and on. Who are your 5?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you had Mike White in there. So is the question who you'll watch next season? Because you'll watch him. He's on the Dolphins.
For whatever, I want to see these guys how they do, where they end up, how they do for whatever reason. Not because they're the best players, but I just like these guys. I like their stories. I like them personally.
Yeah, well, you got to start with the MVP, Lamar Jackson, now 2-time MVP. So definitely the list has to start there. Absolutely electric. Everything that you saw him do in all those highlights at Boynton Beach High School, like the one that our colleague, our friend Wells Dusenberry had. He had a highlight of him going to the end zone, and then he did a little shuffle step. That famous highlight. He had that working the camera at a Lamar Jackson game back in the day, even before he was hired with the Sentinel. Now, one of the top players in the NFL, regardless of position, Nick Bosa, defensive end for the San Francisco 49ers. You got to have him on any South Florida list. So he's a former defensive player of the year, one of the top pass rushers in the game, overall edge rushers in the game. So he's got to be there. I like your Brian Burns pick. So sticking with edge rushers, that's another great one that South Florida has produced. And we saw the Carolina Panthers are going to be exercising the franchise tag with him. So another year for him in Carolina. I think he's going to put up huge numbers, of course. Now, a guy that I covered in high school, one of the top prospects that I got to see, Patrick Surtain II. He's one of the top cornerbacks, all-pro, first-team all-pro, one of his seasons so far in the NFL. Obviously, the son of Dolphins great Patrick Surtain I, and was coached by him at American Heritage High School when I was covering those teams before I got into college beat and then eventually NFL. So he's obviously one of my favorites. So I've got so far, Lamar, Nick Bosa, Brian Burns. All right, so I've got one spot left. It could go to Joey Bosa too, but at the expense of not putting 2 brothers on there. Calvin Ridley, I'm interested in. I remember him. He was a 5-star coming out of Monarch before going to Alabama. Jerry Jeudy was one of the top ones in the range of years when I was most locked in with high school football. But another guy I covered, I'll go with Zay Flowers, and you mentioned him too. I'd probably give him that 5th spot. Just because he's so electric. He's going to be working with Lamar Jackson in that Ravens offense. What a rookie year he had, and he's only going to grow. But, man, I also love Levante David's game, too, as a savvy vet. He was kind of a forgotten member of that national championship Miami Northwestern team, that fall of 08 graduating class. Same year I was coming out of high school, but out of Southwest instead of Northwestern in Miami. And you had those 8 or 9 guys that went on to UM under Randy Shannon, and he wasn't one of them. But, all those guys were supposed to bring the U back. But then out of all those top prospects, Levante David has carved out the best professional career for himself and is still in the league. So kudos to that, man.
Yeah. I mean, just great. Jacoby Brissett, Lo-Fi mentioned Jacoby Brissett, who is a former Dolphin. Just great homegrown talent. Always, that was a good story because as I said, I'm from Texas and I covered Texas high school football, so I always love seeing the Texas, Florida stuff as far as the high school football stuff. By the way, I used to think Texas was better, and after I got here for like 2 or 3 years, it was obvious Florida's better. That settles that.
South Florida specifically. Because it's just so concentrated down here too. Now the rest of the state has its prospects too, but just down here, it's just they've all grown up competing against each other. And to your point, a lot of guys in this draft too. Maybe maybe creeping into the top 5 that we mentioned next year, it'll be like a Dallas Turner or like the guys like Cam Kitchens and James Williams, who I remember seeing him when he was still a freshman year in high school, and he was already a monster. You at a 7-on-7 event, you thought he was a senior in high school, about to go in, and everyone's like, "Who's that guy?" Oh, it's James Williams. He's going to be a stud. Leonard Taylor, Miami Palmetto, Frank Gore Jr. is in this class.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys.
Yep. Good stuff, man. Before we get to our last segment, I'm going to be answering questions online later today. So Matt Newton, I got you. Patrick Vecchio, Newt 942001, Dougie Fresh, Franklin Stubbs, Walt Dog 1234. I've got all y'all's questions that will be answered online later on today. I'll probably add a couple of more in there also. So, all right, Furones, let's wrap this thing up with free agency. We're going to talk about what we think the Dolphins will do in free agency next week. And I had a good one here. Okay, so from One-Eyed Jack 233, Geno Stone at safety could be a great bargain free agent signing. Walt Dog 1234, go after Josh Jacobs. Josh and H-Han will put fear into teams' eyes. Teams will finally have to respect Tua. Don't go after Henry. Josh Jacobs, bring Bama to Miami. So Derrick Henry is Bama too. But anyway, what do you think about those two things right there? I love Derrick Henry. I love A.J. Dillon as a power back. I think they need a power running back and a tight end. What do you think about those names? What do you think about those positions? What do you think the Dolphins do next week?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking running backs, I would love to see Derrick Henry. Just a power back could improve the Dolphins in those short yardage situations, which is probably the main thing the Dolphins need to improve at offensively. Sure, yeah, you could look at tight end and getting more pass production out of the tight end. Hey, I like Noah Fant there. I know Dalton Schultz. I don't think Houston Texans are going to be letting him go. And Hunter Henry's also a free agent, but with the Patriots have a lot of cap space, so I think they'd try to keep him as much as possible. But Noah Fant, I potentially like maybe resurrecting himself after a couple down years in Seattle, being that productive tight end he was in Denver. So I could see him working in the Dolphins system and providing someone who could score touchdowns. Dolphins were the only team not to get a touchdown out of the tight end position. Yeah. But if you're talking about running backs, yeah, I would love to see Derrick Henry. Later in his career, could sort of just maybe take on a role, especially when you have Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane there. Just give him 10 carries a game and pound it in those short yardage situations. You're going to improve so significantly down in those 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2 maybe as well. So I think that that's the way I would go, and especially at this point in his career, maybe he wants to take a little less money and play for a contender. So, and I know there's little rumblings about him maybe wanting to work his way into Miami. So that could be one direction I look at, but that would be after filling in some other holes too, because the Dolphins are good at running back. It's just a matter of maybe just that one aspect, the short yardage situation. A guy like Derrick Henry could really help.
All right. This is an interesting comment from Lofi. I got to go to a Otis Anderson MVP's Super Bowl party, a Riviera guy. I loved Otis Anderson. O.J. Anderson, what a great running back from back in the day. I love that.
Miami Hurricane too.
Yeah, Miami Hurricane also. Yep, correct. C. Dola reminds us South Bay puts out baseball players. They sure do. This area puts out great baseball players.
Broward
Dog,
too.
1, 2, 3, 4. I can't stress enough to go after Josh Jacobs, Eddie Jackson at safety, Levante David at linebacker. I like all of that. What's up to California?
Queen is another guy at linebacker. Now he might be pretty costly, but if the Dolphins cut ties with Jerome Baker, but maybe they just shake down Jerome Baker for some money.
That is another name. I think Lo-Fi had Jerome Baker. But what do you think? Well, let me throw this out first. Do you think the Dolphins have one big free agency move? If X doesn't come back, if they sign Tua to a long-term deal, if Wilkins doesn't come back, you've got some money to spend. You'll probably shake down Jerome Baker and some other people, maybe try to redo Tyreek or Jalen Ramsey. to free up some money. But here's my question: do they have a big move in them in this go for it era? And would a big move be like L'Jarius Sneed, who is exclusive, is franchise tagged, and so he would be very costly, giving up the first round picks and then signing him to a contract? But is there a huge move out there like that for the Dolphins?
Yeah, or with Sneed, the Chiefs might be trying to tag and trade. And
well, that's what I mean. That's what I'm tag and trade.
Yeah, and Mike Tannenbaum was throwing out that precise L'Jarius Sneed, Jalen Waddle trade between the two teams.
He had the other one. The other
corner. Oh, no, Trent McDuffie.
McDuffie, right. He had McDuffie.
Yeah. Okay, right. So I guess similar in a way. Yeah, sorry, you're right. Yeah, he had Trent McDuffie. So similar in a way, but yeah, but also Chris Greer shut down any Jalen Waddle trade talks. He said at the Combine, he said the Dolphins are not moving Jalen Waddle, similar to how he said going back to the Jonathan Taylor trade talks last training camp when all that was going on. So always some interesting stuff going on. So, I think there's probably one big move that the Dolphins have in this free agency class. And then a lot of supplemental moves. You got to get your guys to fill out the roster. And then you kind of wish that at least one between Wilkins and Hunt comes back. And obviously that they bring back Andrew Van Ginkel, keep some of the home grown talent. But, maybe it could be more if they free up some more money. But, I think they're always good for at least one big move, whether it was Jalen Ramsey this past offseason, whether it was there were multiple, the one before Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead, and last offseason you also had Vic Fangio, but that's a coaching hire, not a personnel move. So, I think the Dolphins are probably good for one.
I think so too. Let's talk about a couple of names here. Defensive tackle, DJ Reader, Daquan Jones, Madubuike, Justin from Baltimore, who played for Anthony Weaver. Wide receiver, OBJ, Tyler Boyd. You mentioned the tight ends, Dalton Schultz and Noah Fant. Anybody that grabs you, anybody that I mentioned or that I didn't mention that you're thinking, okay, that's a nice. We mentioned Derrick Henry, and anybody out there that really grabs you.
Yeah, if the Dolphins were to give up or let Christian Wilkins slide, then Madubuike would have been fantastic from Baltimore. But I just don't see the Ravens letting him hit the market. But you're probably looking at that position as far as a defensive tackle. So yeah, maybe they wouldn't be spending so much. That's the whole point in not spending on Wilkins, right? So, but. They still have a week to potentially set that up. I do like I know safety has been mentioned. I do like the possibility of a Harrison Smith if he's later cut and then needs to find a new home deep into his career. Maybe he tries to work his way to Miami. I do like that. So, who else did you mention there?
DJ Reader, Daquan Jones, Leonard Williams.
Yes, D tackles. Yeah. Yeah, maybe not going so much big money, but probably somewhere in the mid spending range, probably under what you're spending on Zach Sealer. So if Wilkins has gone out, I'd say Zach Sealer is probably the top guy, and then you're kind of just supplementing him, and maybe you end up going the draft route as well at that position. There's a lot of good D tackles there.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason, and really as we talk about all this. A lot of it is predicated on what the Dolphins' thinking is. And I wrote a column last week saying it seems like the Dolphins' thinking is kind of like telling all their guys, check out what's out there, and then ask yourself, where would I rather be for the 2024 season, right? It seems Wilkins, Xavier Howard, Rob Hunt, Connor Williams. It seems like the Dolphins are taking the patient approach and being very confident in what they have. Look, you mentioned everything with the weight room, and Dave Hyde had the great story about the food and the everything like that. You've also got Mike McDaniel, right? A coach who allows you to be you. This isn't a grinded out coach who's going to lean on you and yell at you and all that. You have fun here with the Dolphins, and I think the Dolphins are kind of using that as a negotiating ploy strategy. This is what you have here. Where else are you going to get it? Where else are you going to have it better here? Maybe you give us a hometown discount and make a Super Bowl run. The other thing is the Dolphins are almost surely going to be in the playoffs next year, right? Now, unless there's a huge injury wave, but they've had that the last 2 years and made the playoffs. This is about a Super Bowl run. So I think that's part of their strategy. Do you agree? And would that be an effective part of the strategy, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I could see this Dolphins team sort of doing like the Ravens last couple of years where they were down, a lot of injuries stacked up, and then they couldn't make the playoff run even though they had the roster there to do it. But then, maybe they Dolphins turn out like the Ravens last year, and then they're top of the AFC and could be competing at a high level, get into an AFC championship game, something like that, if everything really does come together like it can. So, and then all those things are really desirable, make the Dolphins organization a very desirable destination for free agents. They treat players well. Mike McDaniel's is a player's coach that people like to play for, and state income tax in the state of Florida. There's benefits there. You could take less money on a contract and then in reality be making more money. So, I mean, all these things have to factor in. The warm weather, too. You call South Florida home. Right. Where would you rather be? Perk?
That's it, baby. That's it. I know where I'd rather be. So, we'll see. We'll see if that works for Christian Wilkins and Xavier Howard and some of these other guys, Rob Hunt. It's going to be a very interesting next few days here for the Dolphins. We will be on top of all of it for you guys. Thanks for joining us again. That's David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. We will be back next Tuesday at noon. Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. You're watching SunSentinel.com.